everyone! Today we are talking to this fine young gentleman right here, and this video is really geared towards adults. So if you're one of my kid viewers, you might want to check out this awesome music video here, or this crazy make your own ice cream video in a bag that you can do at home. So you can check out one of these videos. And if you're one of my parent viewers, this interview is for you. Today we are talking to Cory Silverberg, who is the author of this book, What Makes a Baby? We're talking about what makes a baby, because let me tell you, I'm in that position where I'm like, I don't know.
Don't you know?
I don't know what makes a baby.
What makes a baby?
The babies come from nothing.
What else do you need to make a baby?
Beer?
I know. But for me, I was like, I don't know how to talk to my kids.
Right.
And when to talk to them.
Right.
And honestly, the first time my daughter said to me, where did a baby come from? You know what I did?
What?
Ask your dad. I did. I said, ask your dad, but I was kind of joking.
It's okay though.
I know, but it was
Not the greatest answer, but we have to be kind to ourselves as parents.
Okay, because
Yes.
I felt bad because it was joking. Like I thought, throughout
how old was she?
I don't know. She was probably around 6 when she asked.
Okay.
But it threw me off because I was really uncomfortable, and I came from the generation where my mom was very open with me, but when she talked about my body and where babies come from, she gave me an encyclopedia.
Right.
Sat me down in her room and said, if you have any questions, let me know.
Okay.
And so I pretended to read this book,
Right.
and she came in and said, do you have any questions? I said, no, I didn't. And so I actually contacted Cory because I was in the position where I feel a bit like a failure as a parent, because I not because I said talk to your dad, but because I'm thinking, I don't know when I should talk to them. I don't know
how much,
how and what to say. Yeah. And so I thought, if I'm in this position, maybe a lot of you are in this position. So I want to say as well to the parents who are watching this video, you can take or leave whatever advice. It's not right for everybody, and I'm not telling you what to do.
There's no one way to do it.
Right. I'm just giving you information because I really needed this information. All right.
All right.
So today we're talking about What Makes a Baby, and I love this book.
Thank you.
It's a great picture book. It was really easy to read. I read this to my 6-year-old son, and part of me was worried when reading this book that that I would have to talk about how the sperm got to the egg, because the book doesn't actually cover that.
No. So the book is written in a very particular way to so that it works for any kind of family. And the truth is that while most of us probably know that the primary way the sperm and the egg get together, more and more families are doing it in different ways, right? So I realized that when we tell, the traditional books for kids about where babies come from, they include intercourse. And there's a couple things that are, and that's the story for a lot of people, but there's a couple things that are strange about that. Number one is that kids often want to know about this stuff very early. And I'm a sex educator. I've been a sex educator for 25 years, and I'm not convinced that a 4 or 5-year-old actually needs to know about intercourse. But I do think that when they have questions about where babies come from, it's good for them to get answers. So we do it in a very different way that allows parents to say as much or as little as they want, while still giving kind of the basics about what you need to make a baby. So
yeah, that's what I really liked about this, is you didn't have to cover intercourse, and funnily enough, we had infertility with our daughter. Okay. So our daughter wasn't even conceived that way. Right. I mean, I have my husband, and of course we could.
Yes.
And
well, this is the fascinating thing about this, and people who experience infertility know this, and people who don't, heterosexual people who don't, have no clue of the weirdness of this activity that grown-ups do for fun. When it becomes this thing to make a baby, and then it becomes difficult, doesn't work. How complicated it is to separate these two things. But for so many families and for kids, I think it's worthwhile to separate them. The sex education about what grown-ups do for fun, that's a different piece. When kids want to know where they came from, they're not actually saying, can you tell me everything about adult sex? They're just asking one question. And we start sweating because we think it's like, oh my God, I gotta what am I going to have to say? Am I going to have to explain what I do with my partner in bed? And like, no, that's not actually what you do. You want to talk to your kid.
And I think that was my worry with my daughter was, oh my goodness, will she look at me in a different way? And I don't want to talk to her about that. But that's why I loved your book, was because it just talks about there being a sperm and there being an egg, and you know, the sperm and the egg get together, and you know,
and there's room in the middle. So the way we do it is there's room in the middle that says like invites the parent to explain to the child how they got together. And that's so you can, you know, and you can answer it if you're a heterosexual married couple. You could say, well, your mom and your dad, we got it together. And for a lot of kids, particularly younger kids, that's all they're going to want to hear. Now, you know, you asked about how much to tell, and the truth is, depends on your kid, right? Because you can have the 5-year-old who's just like, but how? Exactly, right? And when you have a kid that wants more and more information, you know, it's tricky because I think as an educator that we should give kids as much information as we can, but it is also always appropriate to say, that's a great question, and either let me think about it and talk to you about it later, or even that's some stuff I'm going to talk to you about in a couple of years, right? In the same way that, like, if your child asks what war is, if your 5-year-old happens to be listening to the radio and hears the word war and asks what that is, the way you're going to answer to a 5-year-old, very different than a 25-year-old. Right. And it's the same for sex.
Oh, so that's a very, very good point, that you don't have to answer their questions if it makes you uncomfortable, or if it's something that you want to talk to them about years to come. You can say, that's a really great question, I'm going to talk to you about it later, while still answering their questions. Like I could have answered my daughter, you know, there's a sperm and there's an egg and that's where babies, whatever, to that extent. Okay, so how old would you recommend?
So, I mean, you know, I mean, in some ways I say follow your kid's lead, because the truth is that some kids are very interested in this stuff and some kids don't care at all. And I don't think that every 6-year-old needs to know where babies come from. You know, if you have like a 14-year-old and you've never had any conversation and you're not sure they know, then you probably want to start. I mean, so my big suggestion is to have some books around, right? So, and in fact, my suggestion is to have more than one book around, not force your kid to sit down and read it. Not that your mom forced you.
No, yes, she did. She forced me.
Okay. But anyway, but kids will seek out. Kids will find the stuff in their house that they're interested in. So to have a book around, and then, you know, and pay. I guess my big tip for parents is to pay attention. And it's one of those things that we don't always pay attention to because we kind of don't want to have to deal with it. But pay attention to when your kids' eyes are, you know, ears are perking up. Also when they're looking away, right? So kids will often communicate their discomfort by not making eye contact. And so then it's just good to know. It's like, okay, you can just sort of flag it. It's like, okay, so that was a topic that maybe they're interested in, but they're a little uncomfortable with. My experience, this book is written for kids sort of 4 and up, because my experience is that around 4, 5, 6 is when kids become more aware of things like pregnant bodies. So that, you know, like prior to that, they're not really noticing, like, and, you know, oh, like that woman looks bigger. Why? And asking questions. And also in a lot of families, that's when a sibling comes along. So, you know, so I mean, I guess I would say that if you're in a family and there's another kid coming into the family, that's a good time to think about talking to the kid that's already there, because they should know a little bit. But then the big tip is just you start with a little bit of information and then stop, right? You say, I mean, and that might just be, are you curious about where babies come from? And then wait for the response. But always it's like a back and forth. It's not like a lecture about like, okay, I got to get through this laundry list of things, because kids usually want to know less than we actually think they do, or less than we're afraid they do.
Less than we're afraid that they do. I know. And that was my issue. So when I got Cory's book, I sat and I read it to my 6-year-old. And, you know, as I said, part of me was worried that he was going to ask a question that I really didn't want to answer to him. And he didn't.
Okay.
And the other thing that I like about your book that we were talking about is I'm adopted. And so, you know, a lot of books, when you talk about how babies are made, talk about there's a mommy and a daddy and they get together and they make, but my mom was not my genetic relation, but she was my mom, was my mom.
Right.
And this book kind of covers
So this book was written specifically to work for adopted parents because of that, because all the other books that are out there say that the mom and dad that you're living with, and P.S. we don't all live with moms and dads, but anyway, they say the mom and dad that you're living with are the ones that gave you your sperm and your egg, and that's not always true. And in fact, it's not true for adopted families. It's also not true for a lot of families that are using sperm donation and egg donation. So more and more, that's not true. And I wanted a book that would allow a parent who adopted a child to do the sort of sex education piece without also having to explain everything about adoption, because that's hard. And you need to explain that later. But so in this book, we don't talk about moms and dads. We talk about, you need a sperm and you need an egg. We talk about family. So we ask, like, who's waiting for you to be born. And that's actually the last line of the book is who was waiting for you to be born. And I wrote that because after talking to parents who have adopted, what I got was that in our culture and in our media and our books, we give all the credit to women who give birth. And I know you gave birth, so you deserve lots of credit. This is not about not giving them credit.
Right.
But when you're adopting, there's a lot of waiting. Right? You wait, and you might be waiting 6 months, you might be waiting 4 years, and you're waiting, and while you're waiting, you're imagining your child. Right? In the same way that you as a pregnant person were waiting and probably imagining someone. And we don't talk about how that waiting is also beautiful, and that waiting is love. Right? Adopted parents have so much love for their kids before they even know who their kids are. And I wanted a book that would allow parents to get that kind of credit. That's sort of what made the book, the book started as one thing and it kind of blew up into this bigger thing because it works for adopted parents, it works for single family, single parent families. And I realized that there's so many families who didn't have a book.
Right.
And now they do.
Right. That's fantastic. I know I've said this through the whole interview, but I really, really love this book. I really do. And so the one thing that I want you to take away from just chatting with us today is that it's up to you the amount of information you want to share with your child. I wanted to know kind of what I should share, when I should share, just because I really want to be informed.
So, but What Makes a Baby is sort of designed to help you, to give you a framework for that. But I agree with you that the thing is, it's your role as a parent, it's your right to choose how much to say and what not to say. My big tip for parents is to think about it before you have the conversation, right? So if you have a spouse or a partner, talk about this stuff. Like, what would you want to say to your kid? How much would you be comfortable with? What are you not comfortable with? If you're on your own, then talk to a friend. But it's hard. It's this funny thing. You started this conversation by talking about the fact that this is this thing that you started by joking you don't know where babies come from, but of course you know where they come from. And it's this weird thing that all of us grown-ups know this stuff, but we just don't. It's so hard to figure out how to convey it to our kids.
Yes.
And it's so different than teaching our kid how to cook.
Yeah.
Or even teaching our kids like value stuff about money, where it can feel like it flows much more easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like we know it, but we don't know how to say it.
Right.
So I think the tips that I would like you to take away from this conversation is having books around the house that your kids can look at is a good thing because that opens the door to conversation. Because really I didn't know, do I sit down and say to my daughter, are you ready to talk about where babies come from? Right. But if you have books, then maybe they could say, hey mom, what's the story?
Yeah.
And then I think what age? Well, make it really child-led. If your child has questions, answer those questions.
And know that can start at any age. That can start I've had parents tell me that their 3-year-olds are picking up this book. I mean, they're not reading it, but so it can be any age, and there really is not a right and wrong age.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. This was so helpful, I think, to me. And selfishly, this was very helpful. And I hope that you guys found this information helpful as well. If you guys have any questions, just put them in the comment section below. We're in touch now.
Yeah,
so if there's something that I don't know the answer to, I can definitely email Cory and say, help, what? And if you're looking for your book, where can you find it? It's
available in great independent bookstores everywhere, and it's online, it's on Amazon, it's on Indigo, it's everywhere. It's distributed by Random House.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Okay, so it's called What Makes a Baby. I love it. And as he said, you don't need just one book around. Have a bunch of books. Go into the bookstore, look at it,
and
see
libraries.
if it... And libraries,
yeah,
right. Your book's also in libraries.
Yes, it is.
And you can look at books, see what the content is and whether it fits for you. But definitely, if you read from the conversation like I did, you're not alone. But it is good to be able to talk to your kids. And don't worry, we think that they're going to ask more questions and more in-depth questions than they actually do. Yeah. And if they do ask an in-depth question that you're not comfortable answering, just say, that's a great question, let me think on it and I'll get back to you. Or that's something I want to talk to you about in a couple of years. Yeah. And then they say, okay most of the time.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I also actually think it's okay to say, I'm not comfortable answering that question. So people often ask me as a sex educator, like how I particularly talk to kids. And when I'm shocked by a question, or when I know I should be shocked by a question, I often show it because it's one way of teaching our kids boundaries, right? When a kid asks a very invasive question of their parent, it's actually okay for the parent to be like, not don't look scared, but to be shocked, to say like, oh, that's an unusual question. Maybe that I need to think about it. It's important for kids to know that parents don't have all the answers.
Okay, yeah. That's actually a really great tip too.
All right.
Well, thank you again
for
being here. And where can people find you if they want to know more about you?
So 2 places. Just my general website is corysilverberg.com, and I also write for a website called sexuality.about.com.
Okay, perfect. And I will put those links in the description box below. So thanks, Cory.
Thank you.
And be sure to come back next week because I'll be talking to Cory again about next steps. What do we talk to kids about as they get older? When we should talk to them about it? And he gives us lots of really great information. So be sure to come back. And as always, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care and have a great day.